Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this video I'm going to show you how to assemble my flower photo frame layered design, which you can find from within the Craft with Sarah Clubhouse. The Clubhouse is my members only area where I share new design space projects every single week, and this layered design is one of them. So I'm going to show you how to choose your photo and size it so that it will perfectly fit into the middle of the photo frame, and then how to cut it and stick it all together, and then finally how to assemble it inside your box frame. If you're not a member of the Craft with Sarah Clubhouse, check out the link in the description to find out more, or go to craftwithsarah.com/clubhouse. So let's take a look at how this design appears in Design Space and how we add the photo into the middle. Once you've opened up the project in Design Space, this is what it will look like. Now I'm using the classic canvas in Design Space because my computer is very old and doesn't like the new one very much. You might notice that I am on version 6.6, but I don't have any of the new features like the offset button because one, I am using the classic canvas and it's only on the new one, and two, my computer is only Windows 8, so to get the new features you need Windows 10 or higher, so that's why you can't see them on my screen. So if your design space is looking a little bit different than mine, that's why. It's because I'm on a really old computer. I will be getting a new one soon, so hopefully for future videos it should match up. Okay, so here is the file, and if we look in the layers panel, everything is in one big group, and this means you can resize it to whatever size you want it to be to go in your shadow box. Do the resizing first. Make sure that's the first thing you do. That's going to be way easier to do the rest of the steps if you've got everything at the right size first. If you want to set a certain size, you can type it into the width and height boxes along the top. So I recommend measuring your shadow box first to know what size you need it to be, and then you can resize it in here. When you're resizing your design, you can take your shadow box that you're going to put it in and just hold your ruler against it to try and gauge the size. So my gap in here is about 8 inches. And I want a little bit of space around the edge inside the frame, so I've resized the wreath to 6.75 inches, which will be a nice size in my frame. Once you've resized, go over to your layers panel and click on the group, and the very first group is the one, and that will select every single layer. We want to ungroup these layers because we're going to need to add our photograph into the middle. So to do that, press ungroup at the top of the layers panel. This has now separated everything into two groups, and you can tell this by clicking the little arrow next to where it says group at the top, and then you've got another one underneath here. So I'm going to go to arrange, center front, and then this is my second group. So this is where I'm going to add my photo. I've tried to make this as easy as possible by doing it as two separate layers, and in order to add our photo, we need to ungroup these two layers. So I've got this group selected with the two circles in it, press ungroup again, and now they're separate. Now this is ready for me to add my photo. So I'm going to go into upload and then press upload image. I'm going to drag my photo in, or you can click browse to find it on your computer. And then because this is going to be a print then cut, I'm going to choose complex as it's a photo, so we want it to be the best quality it can be, and then press continue. I don't need to change anything on here, I can just press continue again. And then I want to choose print then cut image, so select the one that says print then cut and then press upload. Click the photo once it's appeared in your recent uploads and then press insert images. If you put in a large file size, then it might take a while. So you can see mine's being a little bit slow, but here it is. I can now drag this over the circles, and at the moment this is telling me that it's too big to print and cut, which is why I've got this warning triangle in the layers panel, but that's okay. We can fix that in a bit. I'm going to click and drag this below the first circle in the layers panel, and the first circle is an outline, and that's just there so that I know where I'm going to cut the photo, because Design Space doesn't let you kind of do opacity on the layers to make it sort of semi-see-through. So if I just had this circle, I wouldn't actually know that I was going to cut it in the right place. But now that I've put this under the outline, and if you want to, you can change the outline to a different colour to make it easier to see. You can now move your picture around until it's where you want it to cut. Now, one thing you might want to do is click on the other group, the one that has all the flowers in, go Arrange Center Front and just drag it over. You don't need to do it neatly, I'm just putting it there so we can see what that picture is going to look like. So you can see if I did that, it's going to cut off my husband's head, which isn't ideal. So you can move it about a bit, like this, or you can select this whole group with the flowers and then use the rotate tool, which I think is just going off the screen, to see how it would look if you rotated it. I'm actually just going to move everything down. So this frame works quite nicely if you rotate it round. It doesn't have to be up the way it loads in Design Space. It can be a bit tricky finding the right layers as you're going, but I think I'm happy with that. So what I can do now is drag the flowers off out the way and then check that all of my photo is in this circle, the bit I want to keep, and that there's no kind of empty spots where I've moved the photo out the way. So if I had something like that, that wouldn't be any good because it's not going to cover the whole of the circle. So you need to make sure your photo does cover the whole thing. And then when you're happy with it, select your Print Then Cut layer, press Ctrl on your keyboard and choose the grey circle, so the one that's filled in. It will be the layer that appears underneath the photo in your layers panel. And then down the bottom, press Slice, and that's going to cut that circle out of your photo. You don't need to keep the other one, the bit that's left over, so delete that, and you can also delete the two circles because we don't need them now. So now we've got the circle and we've got rid of that warning triangle, which means this is now a suitable size to Print Then Cut now that I've done it into the circle shape. And now I've got my frame, and if I drag it above the layer, you can see how it will look, and the photo. So I can now go ahead and cut everything out. When I click Make It, you'll see how it's going to separate things. So I've got my Print Then Cut image here, which will be on one sheet of paper. And I'm going to print this on glossy photo paper. I've then got all of the different parts of the floral frame, which were cut out on coloured card, so it's all ready for me to stick together. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of this cut out. If you've never done Print Then Cut before and you're not sure how to do it, I do have a separate video on how to Print Then Cut. So I'll drop a link to that one in the description of this video. So if you're not sure how to Print Then Cut, go ahead, watch that video first and it will tell you everything you need to know. The first thing I'm going to do is glue the photo to the back of this layer. So I've roughly placed it where I want to go so I can turn it round. And then add a little bit of glue on the back of the wreath. You want to use just a little bit because you don't want it to push out the sides once you add the photo. But equally you want to make sure you've got enough on there that it's not going to fall apart. So I'm not putting glue in the outside of these flower bits or here because my photo isn't going to reach there. Now I can turn this back round, get it into the position roughly where I wanted it to go. So I think about here, and then stick it down. So I've been quite careful with that because I don't want to accidentally glue my craft table if I've got any glue seeping out the edge. So I'm just going to keep that pushed on there. Make sure your photo isn't overlapping anywhere. I'm playing it a little bit dangerous on this side. You can see the photo's right up against the edge of the gold, but it doesn't appear to actually be poking through, so that is okay. And now I can start adding the layers on top. And we're going to start by gluing the darker green bits to the lighter bits. So this is very thin on those edge leaves, so I'm not going to try and glue them because they're just too thin. The glue would just smush out and you'd see it and it would look messy. What I'm going to do instead is add my glue to the lighter piece and just put it in the middle bit, so the bit that's still solid on the darker piece, and get everything in place. Now some of my leaves aren't lining up because my paper's bent a little bit. I used really thin sort of copy paper for the top layer. I think card would have been better because this is warping a little bit. You can see I must have lost a leaf there because there's one missing, but never mind. And then I can do the same on this one. And then let's carefully turn this over. And stick it onto the lighter green. Okay, you can see my glue a bit in there, but I don't think it'll notice once it's in the frame behind the glass. I think it'll be okay. So now that I've got those pieces, I can add some foam to the backs of them and then stick them onto my gold. So let's turn these upside down, being a bit careful because the glue is still wet. And here are my foam pads. So these are a bit big, so I've used a pair of scissors just to cut some smaller pieces. I think that's a bit big there. So you want to make sure that none of your foam goes over the edge of any of these green bits, otherwise you'll be able to see it from the other side. So if you need to, cut your foam even smaller so that you can fill up all the little spaces with enough foam that it'll have a good firm stick on it. And stick this in place, so that's the one which goes down here. So I can just line up the outline against the gold and then stick it in place. There, and then do the same with the other green bit. So I've got it upside down and I can add some foam. I think I'm going to need a teeny tiny bit to go into these leaves, otherwise they might kind of flap off a bit with nothing to stick them. And then this will go over here. And again, I'm going to line it up with what's on the gold. My leaves are a little bit out of kilter because of that thin paper that I've used. I kind of like that, it adds to the effect, I think. It gives it more depth. Okay, so that's the green done. Now we can move on to the butterflies. Butterflies come in two pieces, and I'm going to give them a bit of a 3D effect. So I'm going to gently bend them along the wing and then just glue down the middle to stick them on. Make sure you've got them in the right order because they are different sizes. So just a little bit of glue down where the middle of that butterfly will go. And then I'm going to glue it into place. So you see how that looks with the wings kind of coming off? It makes it look more 3D and it's really pretty. And then for the middle bit of the butterfly, I'm going to do the same. So just bend it up a tiny bit. Try not to actually add fold lines in the card. We're just giving it a really gentle bend. And I can put some glue on the back. I'm not worrying too much about if it goes in that little hole. And then pop him into place. There we go. And now I can do the same for the other two. So now I've got my butterflies, it's time to add the roses and the other flowers. And just like I did with the green layers, I'm going to stick the darker layers to the lighter ones first. These are very, very thin, so you need to be careful with your glue. And just add a tiny bit. You could use a spray adhesive instead of glue if you've got some, but I don't, so I'm going to persevere with my tacky glue. I think it'll be okay. I just need to be careful not to add too much and not to go over the edges. Luckily, because these bits of card are really small, you don't really need a lot of glue to make them stick. One. Oh, got dog hair in that one. There's two. And then this one is a little easier because there's some solid shapes in here. So I can add most of the glue there. And just a tiny bit in the rows. There we go. And just one more with the gold. And again, this is very thin in most places, so it just needs a tiny bit of glue. And let's stick that there. And now we can add it to the rest of the photo topper. So first I'm going to do the two roses at the bottom, and for these ones I think I'll just add a little bit of foam directly onto the green. Line these up. There. And then I've got the red flowers to go on the other side. There, and then one more is the white ones. So again, just a couple of little bits of foam. And that's all the 3D layers finished. So this looks really, really nice. And you could even use this as a cake topper if you put a stick on it, maybe for a wedding anniversary cake, or you could put it on a card as an anniversary card, but I'm going to frame it. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble my frame. If you're not sure how to do that, I do have another video which goes through how you can frame a layered piece of artwork, so I'll drop a link to that one in the description of this video so you can go and check it out. So here's my design in the frame. I've taken the glass out just to show it to you because it was picking up the reflection of my lights and all you could see was the reflection of the camera in there. So I've just taken it out for now, but I will have the glass put back in it for when I put this on my wall. So what I did was I cut out 3 squares of card. I've got the patterned one in the back with the hearts on, and that was the full width of the spacer in the frame. And then I cut a smaller piece of the red stripy paper and then an even smaller bit of the white, and then I just stuck them together with double-sided tape, glued my layered design into the middle, and then I found these little sequins in my craft stash, so I'm not sure if you can see, but they're all sort of metallic and shiny, and then I've just put a little bit of foam pad underneath each one of those to give it a bit of dimension, and that is my design all done. So I hope you enjoyed this video on how to make a photo frame using the layered design from the Craft with Sarah Clubhouse. If you'd like to learn more about the Clubhouse, you can go to craftwithsarah.com/clubhouse or follow the link in the description of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.